Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 18, season 2 of the Standoff with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Well, the weekend started with some great news, Richie, but ended with a poor performance from Queensland. But what did you think of the weekend on the other side of the fence there?
Yeah, it was a weird one not having NRL, but I filled my time watching replays of State of Origin, so yeah, I was good.
And while we're live here on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show on the podcast on iHeartRadio at your convenience. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to be covering everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week. We'll then review State of Origin Game 2 and our picks. Don't really want to talk about it too much. Then we'll stop and answer some questions from you guys and some questions from each other before we preview round 16 and make our picks. And then we'll end the night, time pending, with a recap of the Super League. So remember to send comments throughout the night and questions as we go through, and we'll try to answer them as best as we can. We may as well just get straight into top stories of the week. And good to see you here, Mark. And
Hey, Mark,
I saw Simon. Simon was there too. Evening, guys.
Hey, Simon.
So I guess first bit of news, Richie. We kind of covered it in our own little video on Friday, but Sean Johnson signs with the Warriors on a 2-year deal, starting from next season. We may as well cover it again. Bit of a surprise, a good surprise, but a surprise nonetheless. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm still smiling like a Cheshire cat, mate. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a big fan of the signing, as we made known the other week. He's going to bring a lot to us, eh? He's a different player to what he was, but I think in a way it's good for us. The way he's evolved is kind of just what we need right now. So I'm very pleased. I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah, well, I covered it when we spoke on Friday, and also I joined Mark on his show in the weekend to talk about it too. And very happy with it. I think there's been a lot more positive than negative responses on the social media than I expected. I expected to see a bit more negative, but I think it just feels right. We spoke about it, or I spoke about it with Mark, that it just never really sat with me that he was wearing a Sharks jersey. And Simon says he's happy there too, on half the salary. Yeah, I think the price point we spoke about was quite good too. I think it's a good deal, and I've been watching everything I can about it the last few nights, and I there was watching interviews with him and listening to other people's interpretation. I think the biggest thing that's made me excited is he genuinely feels wants to be at the club. He loves the club. He wants to come back. So it's not another signing the Warriors have made for a guy coming for a pay, like just for a nice little holiday and a big paycheck. It's someone that believes that the Warriors have got something there. It makes me excited for the future, but it's kind of weird with the time of year where this announcement's come. We've still basically got almost half a season to go before he's even here. So
gives us more time to get excited, Brad.
Exactly. And being a pessimist that I can be at times, if the Warriors season continues to be on a decline, at least there's that light at the end of the tunnel for next season. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully we get some good performances from the Warriors again starting this week, with fingers crossed.
Yep.
And Mark also mentioned, to be honest, I don't think I ever sat comfortably with Sean either wearing that Sharks jersey.
No.
Yeah, it just didn't look right.
He's a warrior at heart. He's a warrior at heart.
And he's played himself into some form recently since he's come back from his niggle. I think that's the only asterisk I've got next to him coming here is what happens if he gets injured. I'm a bit worried about the depth at the halves at present. If Cody, I may as well cover that now. We said talked last week about rumors about Cody leaving. It definitely looks like that's starting to firm, and the Titans looks like a possible destination. So if Cody leaves, you've got Sean. You got Sean and Chanel. Sean O'Sullivan hasn't been re-signed yet, so he's most likely gone as well. There's not a lot of depth there for the halves. So if a Sean or Chanel goes down, who's that next one up? That's probably my only concern right now. I'm sure there's someone in the wings they're looking at, but that's probably my only concern that I've got.
Yep, fair enough. Let's hope they're still looking at Cade Cust. Maybe Mark knows. Let us know, Mark.
Yeah, we covered that on his show as well. He wasn't too keen on the Cade Cust idea, but yeah, I think I think he's a good addition due to his ability to play hooker and half. Yeah. He's good cover, which they need until they get some of the youngsters up. There's a couple of talented halves, I believe, in the lower ranks, but you don't really want to throw them straight out there. We've already got our 14-year-old at fullback, so you don't want to throw another young'un out there too. But we'll kind of segue still with a bit of Warriors, but into NRL in general with COVID again in Australia. I don't know. Mark said he'd rather look at Connor Watson. Connor Watson's a good option too from the Knights. He's off contract, can cover basically every position in the backs and hooker. So he would be a good option too. It just depends if he'd be interested in one, moving to New Zealand, and two, potentially being just either a bench player or not even making the 17 and just being there for cover. He might think he's a bit too big for that. I think if he came, he'd probably slot into the 4-man bench quite easily. But then it's who do you take off? Does that mean Jazz would lose the spot, or would Jazz stay and just be a forward and you potentially move one of the props off the rotation? Not too sure. But yeah, COVID. So COVID's reared its head again in Australia, unfortunately, and Warriors have 2 players in isolation. Josh Curran and Ewan Aiken, they were on a flight with a flight attendant that's tested positive for COVID. There was potentially another 4 Warriors that were going to be affected if either of those players tested positive. Thankfully, they haven't. They've tested more players back in the fray, which is very good for the Warriors, because if you lose 6 players and one hit on top of the injuries they already have, that kind of makes me very worried about not only this week, but the next couple of weeks. But NRL has gone into level 4 protocols for their players. And I was going to mention that too. We'll cover that soon, Simon. But Mark's mentioned that Todd Payton's actually in isolation too now. And all the Cowboys have to be tested. So, it hasn't gone. It's not been a great weekend for COVID in the NRL. But yeah, they've gone into level 4 protocols. And Peter V'landys has even come out and said he's not sure State of Origin 3 will be played in Sydney due to all of this as well. There's been murmurs that it potentially could be moved to Newcastle. Yeah. I'm going to keep my ear on the ground for that, and we should have more news on that next week for all of you. But yeah, what do you think about COVID rearing its head, and are you worried that we might not have a Mount Smart game coming up now?
Well, I am worried about that, Brad. I sent you a couple messages during the week about, it might kill my trip to Auckland for the game. So it would be a shame if that were to eventuate and RTS wouldn't get a home send-off. But COVID's doing what COVID's been doing for the past nearly couple of years now. So, yeah, it's still rearing its ugly head. And even the implications on this weekend's games, with Josh Curran and Ewan Aitken not being able to play, it's going to test our depth a bit. So it's a real shame, but these are the times.
Exactly, yeah, and we've still got a bit of time up our sleeve before that game's meant to happen. So I've got my fingers crossed that everything kind of settles a little bit and we don't have any border closures or anything like that jeopardizes it. But if it continues, that's just part of life that we've come used to the last couple of years. And see Simon said maybe the NRL should relocate to Victoria because they have up to 25% capacity. Yeah, that now Victoria seems to be the safe place over there at the moment, where it was always kind of the hotspot.
Yeah.
If everyone in Australia didn't bloody have it, I'd say move them all to New Zealand so we could get some live games, Richie. But that's probably a bit too risky. But yeah, they might have to do something because they're kind of shuffling everyone around as it is right now. And I see Mark said to keep Origin in Queensland because it's working so well for New South Wales this year. Yeah, we have to talk about that game soon, Mark. So thank you for reminding me. But yeah, we may as well go with more Warriors news. Chad Townsend, we talked about it last week, about rumours he could potentially join the Warriors, and that's now official. He's with the Warriors for the rest of this season and is starting this weekend. So what are your thoughts about Chad coming home to the Warriors?
Well, just given the way our halves have been performing of late, I think it's welcome news. He'll add a bit of calmness and experience and bring a decent enough kicking game. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased about it. I think it'll be okay. Hopefully, him and Dallin slotting straight in this week, so hopefully that goes off without a hitch, and you know they've integrated into the team nice and quickly.
Yeah, it should be good. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he goes. I thought he was playing quite well. Mark said, "What game constitutes two teams?" I thought, yeah. See, we can just we'll keep all the giving Brad crap about Origin for the next segment, I think. And there was a good question from Simon there, Paul, which we may as well put a hold on to our question section. That one was quite interesting, so I'd like to take a chunk of that later. But yeah, Chanel Harris will keep on the Warriors train. He doesn't require surgery on his pec and could potentially be back in 4 weeks. Which I think is great news, not only for him, but for the Warriors in general. Think on another side of it, I think it'd be great for him to get some game time with Chad and learn off Chad while we've got him. Think that will give him a lot of experience that he's potentially not been getting essentially since, I'd say since Sean left the club, but probably Blake Green. I think Blake Green, as critical as I've been of him in the past, you can't deny he has a lot of knowledge with all of his experience. So I think having a guy like Chad there, Chad's won a premiership. He knows how to lead a team around. He's got all that stuff. If Chanel can get as much information and knowledge off him as he can in the next couple of rounds, what is it, like 10 rounds, I think?
Yeah.
I think that will not only do wonders for the Warriors this season, but for the Warriors in their future with what Chanel can do. So, yeah, great there. And Mark said Chad's 5th tackle kicking game is going to be a big change. Yes, that means the Warriors will actually have a kicking game. So that will be handy. And Chad's been not playing first grade, but the last game he played was against the Dragons, and he actually won the game for them with a golden point field goal, if I can recall. So having a guy that can step up in that clutch situation, which the Warriors have found themselves in quite a few times this year, I think will be quite beneficial for us. And I promise the last bit of Warriors news. It kind of segues a bit, but Reece Walsh missed State of Origin due to a hamstring injury. There's been no word on how long he could be out. He was out this week regardless due to the Origin guy. He had to be in isolation. So he was never really going to be ready for this game. But hopefully it's not too bad and he'll be ready for next week. And when he left Origin, Ronaldo Mulatalo was brought in to make his debut, but then was ruled out 24 hours before kickoff due to being ineligible to play for Queensland. That saw Xavier Coates make his return at the last minute. What did you think about this whole kerfuffle about Ronaldo not actually being eligible for Queensland but being picked? He's been playing for Queensland in age grade, so my feeling is this should have been picked up long before this game.
Game day, long before game day.
And he was named in the extended squad for this game. So you think at that point, I would have thought that people would be checking to make sure everyone's legit, but I'm not sure. I know it's a bit murky because I think the rules are that you have to be living in Australia before the age of 13, and he was 13 and 10 months or something, apparently.
He missed it by 10 months.
I'll throw a spanner in the works. I think you should be born there. I think that makes it a lot easier for this type of thing and keeps it a state of origin, because I know everyone's favorite guy, Buzz Rothfield, basically said a lot of these kids playing Origin now are technically not from Australia because they've all moved there, admittedly at a young age, but they all moved there from other places. And I think they were talking a lot about they are saying that the players don't have that state of origin rivalry that the Australian kids do. I'm not sure. I think Jerome Luai, he's come out and said how committed he is to playing for Samoa, but he's very proud to play for New South Wales.
Look, I don't mind so much if you're born there or if you're born elsewhere and moved there as a kid. I mean, especially when Australia has scouts over here in New Zealand picking up school kids and whatnot. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a little bit their own doing in some cases as well. But yeah, the Ronaldo one was funny, mate. They bend the rules for someone like Suwali to play NRL before he's 18, but they can't bend the rules for Ronaldo, who had gone up through age grade Queensland teams. It's strange, you know. You'd think they would have given him an exemption.
I think that goes to who the player is as well. And let's be fair, if Ronaldo had played or didn't play, I don't think it would have changed the outcome that we're going to talk about soon.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, I think it should have just been picked up earlier. It makes league look bad. That the NRL go, oops, 24 hours before kickoff. It doesn't make them look that professional. It looks a bit. You wouldn't see it. It's hard to say. I was going to say you wouldn't see it in the international game, but the international game is just as murky when it comes to eligibility. We saw it. You think the World Cup where Nathan Feen played for the Kiwis and then was pulled out because it wasn't correct and he wasn't eligible. And Mark just said while he plays for the Roosters, if Ronaldo was a Rooster, he would have been helped. If Ronaldo was a Rooster, this would never have come up. Putting my Rooster hating hat on, if you will. But yeah, hopefully this has kind of woken everyone up to it and they clear the situation up before the next one, and actually there was a line in the sand already, but make that line a bit firmer so we don't have this type of error happen again. Very disappointing. But we'll get off the Origin just for a little bit, I promise. But Kevin Walters has declared that Tavita Pangai Jr. and Matt Lodge will not be leaving the Broncos this season, like the rumors that we talked about last week. They want to make our news irrelevant now, Richie. So it sounds like Ben Eichen, when he's coming to from what I hear, he's kind of
tapped him on the shoulder.
And said no. Because as we talk there's pros and cons with Matt Lodge, but I think what he can do for you on the field is something the Broncos don't really want to lose. So I think Ben Eichen's kind of realized that type of thing and said no. And Tavita Pangai Jr., very much the same. He's very good on the field, very bad off it. And it's just, for him, it's just about consistency. If you can get Tavita Pangai Jr. to play how he's played the majority of the season for the Broncos year long, he makes your team a lot stronger. And they're going to need big forwards like that to help Adam Reynolds next year. That just goes without saying. And if you lose them, who do you bring in to replace them?
Yeah, well, honestly, looking at whenever the Broncos have done well this year and had a win, Tavita Pangai Jr. and Matt Lodge have been the heart of it, and they've been making the meat of their yardage and everything. So I don't think those two guys are the at the heart of the Broncos' problems, to be honest. And I thought it was quite weird that what was happening the week before with Tavita Pangai Jr. and telling them he can look elsewhere, and it's even stranger that they've done a big U-turn. So maybe this is a bit of Ben Ikin influence, which is good. They need some fresh ideas, and it's nice to see some action.
Yeah, definitely. And I've brought up Mark's comment here because I think it's actually a good point that I wanted to bring up too. Said they talk about wanting to boost the international game, yet Mal Meninga is trying to sway Jerome Luai to turn his back on Samoa now to represent Australia. Double standards so long as Australia benefit. Agree 100% there. It was only a couple of weeks ago Mal Meninga was saying Luai shouldn't be in the Origin team playing for New South Wales because he wants to play for Samoa. And then now New South Wales, somehow with the horrible team they have, managed to get a couple of wins. And he wants them in there. He wants them in an Australian team. They got to stop it. Maybe that's another reason why I brought up the being born in Australia for Origin, because that you see this all the time. How many guys in that Origin team could be playing for New Zealand, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji? If they weren't playing Origin, and a lot of those guys will pick Origin over the international game. It'll be interesting to see what Luai does though, because he did come out and say he would play for Samoa for free. So if he turns around and says, no, I'm playing for Australia, it's not a good look for him. Again, though, you get paid pretty well to play for State of Origin and play for Australia. So I wouldn't give him too much stick for saying yes to that. But if you're going to be swayed, you can't come out and say, I'm going to play for my home island for nothing. That's how much I want to play for Samoa. But yeah, he hasn't said that he's going to defect, so I'm not going to throw shade at him when a decision hasn't been made. I think he'll stick with Samoa.
Hope so.
He's clearly going to make State of Origin even if he does play for Samoa, because he's in that Penrith team that seems to go all right. So I think it's not going to cost him an Origin job. So
yeah, look, this is just my opinion, but I think over on the Western Island in Australia, they say they care about the international game, but I think it's just a little bit of lip service. I think State of Origin's always been their showpiece, and they'd rather look after that backyard first and their own backyard, if you get what I mean.
I 100%. I think if they actually believed in saying that, we would have actually seen an international game the weekend just gone. There would have been New Zealand versus Pacific Islands, or New Zealand versus Tonga, New Zealand versus someone. Even if it was they didn't play the Kiwis, they had like Samoa versus Tonga or something like that, or even just Pacific Islands mix-up or something to get people interested in internationals. It might not happen. That's in my news coming up, but there is a thing called a World Cup apparently coming up. So the fact that you're potentially going to have all these teams walk into World Cup with no warm-up games is crazy. You can say State of Origin's kind of a warm-up game for Australia, but the Kiwis, I don't even remember the last time the Kiwis played. It seems that long ago.
Yeah.
And Mark's just said he can't see Munster not getting picked for Australia no matter how poorly he plays. Yeah. I think the only reason they would pick Luai in Australia is because of his partnership with Cleary. But I think Munster will get in anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, it would be unfortunate to see him if he did defect and then he doesn't even play. He ends up being like a number 14 that gets a couple of minutes. But yeah, I'm pretty confident. We're recording it, so I can get embarrassed later. I'm pretty confident he's going to stick with Samoa. But yeah, next bit of news, Yvonne Sampson has been announced as the new co-host for NRL 360, replacing Ben Aitken. Have you watched any? I haven't been able to watch any yet.
Yeah,
how is she? How is she on there? She's usually pretty good on everything I've seen her on anyway.
She's good. She's nice and professional. The big challenge for her is going to be getting a word in over the other three. Paul Kent, James Hooper, and Buzz normally sort of ramble over themselves and fight each other for for airspace. So
but even Ben Aitken struggled at times with that. With the three grandpas trying to talk over the fence to each other. But congratulations on her for that. I was hoping they were going to go with a female host on there too. And there was really she's kind of the top of that list. There are quite a few that are very good though that could have done the job, I thought. And then the last bit of news before we get into what you've been waiting to talk about with Origin, but a decision will be made by the end of this week if the World Cup will go ahead or be delayed. So we just talked about there's no warm-up games. There potentially might not need to be. But I'm not sure. I think it probably will get delayed with how COVID's been. The fact that it's flared up again in Australia, there's still a lot of problems in the UK where it's going to be based. But not too sure.
No, I agree, Simon. I don't think that they care about the. You're very naive. Australia don't care about that. Then to the actual game, I don't think England and don't care about it as well. Yeah, possibly right.
Yeah, I feel it's just the Pacific Island teams and us that care about internationals, to be honest. But I love a good Kiwis game, and I think the passion you've seen from Tonga and its fans have shown how good it could be. But you're right. Australia and England don't really care. I think Australia would be happy if there was if Australia just didn't have internationals and they just played State of Origin. And Mark said if the World Cup doesn't go ahead, the talks in Australian versus Kiwi series at the end of the year, which I think they'd have to do. They have to fill that gap with something. But I'm not sure if I want to play Australia because it's going to be New South Wales versus the Kiwis, and I don't like our odds.
or why not make it a tri series and include Tonga? Have to go 3-1.
Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah.
I think so. And you go.
No, I was just going to say, it's who I wish they would pump up the international game. If they really pull their socks up, and it could be great. I grew up on seeing Kiwis games at Carlisle Park and things like that, and I just get such warm, fuzzy memories. So it's a shame that it's just kicked to the wayside so regularly.
We don't even really get that many Kiwi games on home soil anymore either.
No.
If we do get them, it's over in Australia, which I think's a big loss. I'm trying to remember. I think the last time I went to a Kiwis game, it was at Mount Smart, but David Kidwell was still playing. That's probably more on my part than the Kiwis, but I think they still need to invest more into it. Mark's put there that he'd rather the Pacific nations give Australia a big FU and play a Samoa, Kiwis, Fijian and Tonga series. If Australia isn't interested, they should just go without them and do it. And I think that would be great. I think in the past you might have gone, no, because there was such a divide or such a distance between the Kiwis and the Pacific Islands now. But Samoa has got a very good team, and the Kiwis, they always can pull something together, and Tonga is right up there. I would put Tonga right up there with New Zealand and Australia. I'd put them above England. I think they're the big smokies for me. When it comes to any game, I would never write them off, even if they're playing Australia, because they've just got so much talent. Paul said in the background, the problem is the money's in Oz. Yeah,
very true.
That's true.
Very true.
But and yeah, Simon said Thursday our time, so tomorrow, for the World Cup news. So that's obviously going to be something we're going to talk about next week. And yeah, Mark said Tonga and Fiji have both beaten the Kiwis in the past few years, and Tonga also beat Australia as well at Mount Smart.
Look, and if you put the Kiwis versus Tonga at Mount Smart, they'd sell that twice over. They'd sell it. Yeah. They'd sell it out. So, yeah,
you could put Tonga against anyone at Mount Smart, and they're going to sell it out.
Yeah,
it's just the amount of support they get is just fantastic, and I don't know why the NRL aren't. I would be using Tonga for everything. Go Tonga. It doesn't matter where Tonga goes. They get all the fans. They all come out of the woodwork and come and support that team. So I'd be trying to throw my team against Tonga every day of the week that I could, just because it's going to have bums on seats, which is how you make your money. So yeah. Hopefully we get some international footy soon, because it's been a while. But we may as well get into what you want to talk about, State of Origin. Before we get into your big game, on Friday night, we had the women teams play, with Queensland actually doing something right for Queenslanders and getting the win here, winning 8-6. I enjoyed this match. Even though it wasn't high scoring, I thought it was quite entertaining. I'll segue a bit into a funny moment. We didn't really understand what time it was kicking off, and Sky Sport in New Zealand, right before kickoff, had a replay of last year's game, and we thought it was the live game. So we were watching it, quite paying attention, and then realized that on the website the time hadn't started yet, and some of the players weren't wearing the right jerseys, and then put it together. Was a real shake your head moment for me. I was quite embarrassed, but other than that, it was really good. And yeah, Mark said 4 of the Warriors girls are in the Queensland women's team as well, which was great to see. And yeah, I thought it was really entertaining, and I thought the referee did a good job. She was the referee in the game last year as well, and she had to make a tough call. It was all leveled up in the final stages, and she gave a penalty that ended up giving Queensland the win. And I'd put money on it. I don't think one of the male referees in the NRL would even make that call. I don't think they have the balls to do it.
Was it the right call?
I'm a Queensland fan, so I'm going to say yes. I think you could definitely argue on both sides, but I think the fact that it could have gone both ways is why the NRL guys don't make that call. They're too scared to.
Yeah.
I think it could have gone either way there, but yeah, I thought it was a very good game. And I think this game was evidence alone that they need to make this a 3-game series instead of just one match a year. And yeah, Mark's also commented the young Queensland hooker Destiny Brill was brilliant on debut. Yeah, she was. She came out. She was a little bottle rocket. Thought she played really well. There's a lot of very good players on both sides, which makes me more excited that there's more teams coming into the women's NRL comp this year. Unfortunately, as we've covered already, the New Zealand Warriors won't have a team this year. But when they come back in as well, we're going to have quite a few teams. I think it's going to make it a lot more exciting. And you'll see the women's game get to improve with more of them getting to be on that grand stage and playing in front of big crowds and stuff. And I think they always give it their all. It's always very entertaining. So, yeah, any thoughts before we move on to the big game from you about this game?
Oh, like you say, but despite the scoreline, it was a good game. Some nice big hits in there as well. I think the call at the end probably was the right call, even though there was a bit of, the New South Wales camp threw a bit of shade there, calling it milking. It is what it is. There was a bit of a leg pull, and I think, like you, I think the ref made a brave call there and pretty much got it correct. Just a shame it's only a one-match series. I think New South Wales would have come back and won.
and like Mark's just said here, for people listening, the problem with making the women's game a 3-game series is the whole not fully professional aspect. Play a tough 100%. Origin and then back to study or work the next day. That's true. Then he's also added, need to get these women as full-time professionals. I think that needs to be the next goal. First goal is getting more teams into the NRL women's competition and then making them professional. They have to. you see it, Mark would know because he's spoken to a lot of the Warriors women's side. It was a bit different because of COVID and everyone being over there, but when they're on both sides of the Tasman, having to like book time off from your job because you have to fly to Australia and play a game and then come back and stuff, that's a lot of pressure. A lot of the young ladies have families as well. So juggling a family, not getting paid to play football and a job that pays you is a lot of pressure. And the games are quality enough to be worthy for them to be paid for their services.
I think you might see it. We'll probably see it down the line for sure. It's just, we're in uncertain times, and I know COVID affected the NRL financially, and they're trying to recoup those losses. So
I think if the
said,
Roosters just gave up some of their salary cap, they could pay for everybody in that league.
100%. But the quality of the women's games coming on leaps and bounds, especially since bringing in the NRL. So, it will end up there eventually. But, all in time, I guess.
Yeah. So we may as well go on to the only other game of the week. Sunday night, New South Wales just scraped through and beat Queensland 26-0.
Yep.
Another embarrassing night for me, and first time Queensland have been held scoreless at Suncorp. So very, very dark days. I may as well let you go because I kind of switched off on this game mentally about 10, 20 minutes in.
Understandably so. Yeah.
So what happened? What happened there?
I think a little bit. New South Wales are a fantastic side this year, and then also you got to look at the Queensland team, and they're having a lot of trouble in key areas. Missing some key players. When you think some of the stock they've got out with Kalen Ponga, and even then the backups with Brimson not there, and Harry Grant. So, I think you throw all those guys back in the mix, it becomes a little bit closer. But then you look at New South Wales, and that backline is just deadly. And Latrell and Tommy and Tedesco was fantastic in this game as well. He had a lot of touches. But then Latrell with some massive defensive plays, one-on-one rips leading to tries, and then an intercept try. But then on the other side of the ball, you see Tommy Turbo and To'o saving tries as well, even when the game's already done and dusted. So,
yeah, that Tommy Turbo try saver in the corner on Xavier Coates was amazing. It was like Roger, and like you said, the game was already basically over. They knew that if Xavier had scored that try, it wasn't going to magically resurrect Queensland, but to still have not only the pride in the jersey, but the pride in yourself to make sure he didn't score, I think was a great kudos for Tommy Turbo, which I genuinely don't like doing with Manly players. But I thought they were all fantastic. Mark's put a nice little joke in there, which I will say because it is funny. Brad, can you explain why Mulatalo was ruled ineligible to play, but the rest of the Queensland squad decided not to play also? Yeah, that's actually a note I have. Queensland never turned up. They didn't turn up. Amelie, I thought the first 5 to 10 minutes, I thought there might have been a game on the line, but then after that, it was just may as well have watched the last one where they didn't show up either. They just look horrible, and there are a lot of good players out. Mark's also said Tarek Sims and Isaiah Yao, the unsung heroes.
They were great.
They played well. There were even people talking about why Sims was in that team, saying he didn't really need to be in there, but I thought he had a great game.
Both games. He's real good.
This team is full of superstars, but you need grunt men as well. And that's basically what they are. That might be insulting them a little bit due to how talented they are. But you need guys that are going to get in the grind and do the hard yards for you. So your Tommy Turbos, Latrell Mitchells, and Tedesco's can look pretty out the back. It's I think even if you did have Ponga and all those guys in that Queensland team, might have been more competitive, but I don't think I would have sat here and said Queensland would have won. Despite picking Queensland every week, and shock horror, I'll pick them in the next one as well.
What do you think the problem is, Brad? Because I think when you look at, they've got a lot of people out, but then their big players, their captain in particular, and Munster, their halves pairing, Daly Cherry Evans, the captain, they just look disjointed. It's not like they didn't have chances. They had a good amount of ball in the game, and they just never looked like doing anything with it.
I don't want to blame the coach because, in all honesty, I don't think you really need one for this. I think everyone kind of knows what they're doing. They get in. You kind of need a bit of guidance, but I don't think Paul Green's of that caliber. But then I didn't think Kevin Walters was either, which you kind of saw Queensland weren't really playing that well. And then they pulled out the miracle one last year when they had Wayne Bennett back. So I think there's a bit of that. And I don't know. I feel like the Queenslanders just don't have their heart in it. That's a hard thing to say because I don't know. I can't speak for them, but
I think you're on the money there. But maybe that's more what at this level what the coach needs to do. There was a lot being said about some of their them talking about lack of motivation and kind of what more motivation do you need other than being selected for your state? Maybe at this level the coach just got to give you a big G up and make you want to bleed for your state. And that's kind of what Bennett would give you.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark's put 2 comments in, which I'll cover. Safiti's grown into stature this season too. Yes, Safiti, he had a great game. And he also said, do you think as a defensive centre like Will Chambers would be a good selection? Yeah, we talked about it for the last game.
Yeah.
Saying Kurt Capewell's not a centre and he shouldn't be out there. And I expected them to either bring Chambers in or bring someone else into the game. And I think, that's probably the biggest thing. It's okay for New South Wales to put superstars in the centres that they know what they're doing, but when you're putting superstars like that on one side and a forward on the other, you're on the wrong side of that 100%.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've not had a 3-0 sweep since 2010. Look, there's only been 2 this century. What do you? Are we going to see a 3-0? Do you think, or are we going to see the third sweep of the year of this century?
Well, Cleary's out, so that makes it a little bit harder. I know Nathan Cleary
Cleary's out.
That's a big out.
Cleary's out, and Harry Grant and Ponga should be back for the next one. Reece Walsh will probably find himself in the mix again too, just because Greeny wants to hurt us Warriors fans. And I think, if there's any time for a 3-0, it's probably this right now with this New South Wales team. But I don't know. Stranger things have happened, and I'll still pick Queensland because I'm stupid, really, I guess. But I think, it's too hard to tell. I didn't expect either of these games to be as one-sided as they were. And then Murphy's Law, the next game's going to be really tight.
Brad, look, we know you like your merch. We can see you've got your calendar in the background. You got your jerseys and stuff there. Obviously, as a Queensland fan, I just want to know: are you going to be going shopping?
No. That's hurtful, Paul.
It's magnificent.
No, Queensland or State of Origin is always that weird one for me because I support Queensland, but if Queensland lose, I'm not really that worried about it because I'm not a Queenslander. I wouldn't change it.
You like these colours, don't you? You like the black and white.
Yeah. So I always want to see Queensland win, though. But if I think it's great for New South Wales at the moment. They've got all the best players basically that are running around in NRL jerseys playing for their side. So they should be doing what they're doing right now, and full credit to them. And Mark's also said Vaughton, Meninga, Bennett, all proud Queenslanders that buy into the passion and belief of the Queensland spirit, and the players buy into that. Green doesn't seem to have that passion. And
100%.
that's kind of what we touched. I think it's that. That's why. I think it's that thing. It's kind of like what we said in regards to New Zealand teams. We're like Bluey McLennan. Bluey McLennan's that kind of coach where he didn't do well in the NRL because you had to do it for 26 weeks. But for like the Kiwis in those little one-off games or a couple, he was that kind of gets you emotionally invested, and that gives you that push. And Mark's also said, can I ask how you became a Queensland supporter, Brad? My stepmother's family lived in Queensland when I was a youngster. So that was kind of all I really knew of Australia on that type of things. So I think, that's probably why I just gravitated to that, because that's where I had family. So that was my team. And Simon said, can Queensland get Wayne Bennett back in the coaching? He doesn't want to. They wanted him to stay for this one, and he said no. So I don't think so. But I didn't think you'd see Wayne Bennett in the coaching role for Queensland again last year, and he came back. So with Wayne Bennett, you can never rule him out. I think you just need to get him on the right day, and he'll come back. I think he'll probably still be coaching when he's in his 90s. So
probably.
We may as well. That's it for that game. Well done, Richie. Your team won again. And our picks, I got 0 because I picked the game wrong, and you got 1, which puts our New South Wales totals to me 0 out of 2, and you 2 out of 2. So I might come back. I might come back with 1 game left. I might get you, pip you at the post.
Last game's worth 3.
Yeah, and Mark also commented saying, I thought it might have been the Warriors playing in Origin. Yeah, we've all been Queenslanders bar Ryan Hoffman. Nah, it was before that. I went through the poor years of Queensland when Andrew Johns was running around. So I think it's just dominant half. I always go with whoever's the best half in the game. That's the Origin team that's going to win. You had Joey Johns in New South Wales, really good. Then you had Thurston. Now you got Cleary. So I guess when Sam Walker becomes like the next big thing, that's when Queensland will come back. Or it's our Lord and Savior Reece Walsh. That's the only games really. So we may as well get into viewer questions before we ask ours. Can you find that one Simon said, Paul? He's trying to find it. Mark's been taking over the comment feed, so there's so many comments there. It's a bit hard.
It is, but it was. So basically, the question from Simon was: be interested in your guys' opinion on the Queensland Rugby League chairman insisting on the Cronulla Sharks relocating to Brisbane. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not for it. It just shows how desperate Queensland are to try to get a team that can win there, because they're going to try to take even the Sharks. Of all teams, the Sharks, really. I'd rather try to take Canberra, to be honest. But I think there are so many teams in Sydney. So if you were going to move a team, a Sydney one is. But I don't see a person in Brisbane being swayed to support the Cronulla Sharks just because they moved there and become like the Brisbane Sharks or something. I don't think you've got a team that's already got its base. You can't relocate it and expect that base to move with it. So I think it'd be very hard. But in saying that, if they move the Warriors to Australia, I'd be upset, but I would still be a Warriors fan. So that one throw, but that's a bit different because it's the Warriors. But yeah, I don't think you can switch a team. Like Simon said, personally, he's against any relocations of teams in Sydney, and he's not even. So yeah, I don't think it's going to help. I don't think relocating is going to strengthen the game. No, by any means.
Well, the Sharks have got 55 something years of history, so it'd be weird to relocate them to a completely different state, to a state that hates that team.
Yeah, I'm still for starting a new team in Brisbane and just getting rid of the Broncos because they're rubbish.
You might as well just start a fresh team instead of relocating a Sydney team to
which is what they're going to do anyway. But yeah. And were there any other questions, or are we just too good answering them as we go?
We've just been answering them as we go, but there is. I was just going to quickly bring an image up for us to.
It's not another joke one, is it? You can't do that to me again.
It's not another joke one. No, it was. It was having a look at and that hasn't worked because when I had it open before, it had all the had all the picture or had all the teams. So that didn't work. Sorry, folks. But it showed you where all the teams kind of are located, which is what. So let me just try and make that a bit bigger so you can actually just see the picture itself. But when you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or more than half the teams in Sydney, and then all the rest of them are basically on the east coast. There, there's nothing. There's nothing in the left-hand side of Australia. To try and say that sort of league is only really based in Australia and New Zealand isn't really true, is it? It's just based in Eastern Australia. It's not. We're not even talking about international here. It's not even a national competition in Australia. So it is very, very Sydney-centric.
I think Mark could probably add more to that, being a guy over there. But it's a very Sydney-based sport. Especially you've got Aussie rules kind of dominates. So I said the majority of the Sydney teams are in West Sydney as well.
And Tigers ones aren't really, but I think the key thing is, you say moving teams probably isn't going to work. The key thing is, if there's any expansion, it can't be another team in Sydney.
Yeah, and it's not going to be. They're looking at Brisbane, and then there'd be another team in New Zealand before there was another Sydney team. But like Mark said, the original NSWRL, which was what the comp started as, was a Sydney competition. So that's why there's so many, because that's where it was, and then they just expanded. There's been teams that have come and gone as well. Teams that have merged. We had Balmain for a long time before they merged with Western Suburbs to become the West Tigers. You had St. George and Illawarra as well. They merged. So you had a few of those happen. But
you had Super League era too, where you had like your Adelaide Rams and
the Crushers.
Was it the Western Reds? Who was the team from Perth? Yeah. So they've experimented with it in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, Adelaide is someone that doesn't have that, so that could be expanded into. Obviously, Perth, both two places. Never mind, obviously Tasman as well. Oh, sorry, no, not Tasmania as well. But anyway, that's just me prattling on. And you say we dealt with most of the questions actually as we were going through the show.
So we may as well go with your question for me, Richie, because I know you love talking about Origin, so you may as well keep going.
I wanted to keep it Origin themed, so I just could keep prodding you throughout the show, Brad. I want you to pretend you're in my camp for a moment, with Kaleri being ruled out for Game 3. Really interesting to see what happens with his replacement, and there's a number of options. Obviously, you got Adam Reynolds, Mitch Moses have been in pretty good form. You could move Luai to 7 and promote Jack White into 6, I guess. So, what would you do? Something different entirely, or someone from that lot?
I think it's a toss-up between Moses and Reynolds. Before I answer, Mark said the Rams never really worked, but Perth is a league city and could be a viable option. Yeah, I think they need to look at something in Perth too. Yeah. But back to your New South Wales, I don't really care who plays, man. Just put the water boy out there.
I knew you wouldn't, but
I think it has to be between Moses and Reynolds. I think out of the two, I think Moses has been playing better as of late. So I would probably be going with Moses. I don't really like either option. I feel like it kind of, your level of half kind of takes a nosedive after Cleary. Not saying that Queensland are any better, but yeah, I think it has to be just based on form. I'd probably be going with Moses, but then Reynolds, I think Reynolds can deliver if he's asked as well. So it is really hard, but I think those are the two. And yet Mark's just said Reynolds would provide better kicking option and as a goal kicker. Yeah. So I'd probably go with Reynolds because I generally just don't like Mitchell Moses.
And Reynolds probably got better big game experience than Moses as well.
Yeah. But yeah, and Mark's also said Moses would inject more spark. Yeah, he would inject the spark, but I think you've kind of got Luai that can do that for them. So I'd have your Reynolds and Luai as your option there. And that would kind of cover all the bases. But Fittler's had a little bit more experience with rugby league than me, so he probably knows what he's doing. So I'm sure whoever he picks is going to do the job. Hopefully they just don't defend or don't play as well as they have been, because I want to see Queensland get a win. And Mark said neither can defend like Cleary, though. Yeah.
True.
There's enough big forwards in that New South Wales team to kind of cover that anyway. So I think they'll be fine unless Reece Walsh is playing, and then Reece Walsh will just cut them all to shreds. So, yeah. So that's a good question from you. We'll just put a stop on State of Origin talk for a little bit, for a couple of weeks now, unless there's some big news. But my question for you, we're going back to the Warriors because we didn't get a game to talk about. So let's talk about them now. With Chad Townsend now with the Warriors and Chanel Harris-Tavita now not being out for the season, who would be your halves pairing when Chanel is fit and healthy to return? Would you kick Chad out, or would you...
Nicarima and CHT. I joke. Look, for me, I think it almost feels a little bit like... I don't want to talk prematurely, but Cody almost feels like he's got a foot out the door. So probably Chad and Chanel Harris-Tavita. And you brought up a good point earlier about him learning off the senior half, and he hasn't really had that a lot. I'm a big fan of that option. Nicarima could always bench ride and provide cover for Egan as well, and the halves, at the expense of Otakolo, obviously, which I eventually want to see him get more game time down the road. But yeah, I think probably Cody 14, the halves Chad and Chanel Harris-Tavita. That would be what I'd run with.
That's how I do it too. And now, full disclosure, we haven't seen Chad run out in a while, so there might be a chance where we were like, oh no, getting Chad was a bad idea, and then we changed this opinion. But yeah,
Warriors fans can be fickle.
We can. But yeah, I think that's the most obvious choice with Cody's flexibility and his skill at being a good number 14. I think it's an easy choice for me. And if he is leaving, if it does get announced that he is going to leave the club, you can kind of put him where you want, because he's not going to be in your future plans. So you could put him into 14, where I think is his actual position, and get him to play. You don't have to try to keep him happy as a half just because you're trying to keep him in the team. But yeah, we just, as the cliche goes, we have to wait and see until they actually play. I do think, though, Chad and Cody will be a good combination for this week, which brings us into segueing into round 16.
I see. Before you do that, I see Mark's got to leave. He's got to go prep for his show with Kevin Campion. Hey, say hi.
That's right. Yeah.
Say hi to Campo for us, Mark. He's a regular viewer of the show.
So we've got we'll talk about the ladder before we move on. Thanks for reminding me, Paul. The ladder has not changed since last week, but I guess more I guess I'll throw a question out to you, Richie. What teams do we still have a shot? We did talk about it last week, and Nathan Cleary, I forgot to mention in the Origin game, Nathan Cleary is going to be out for a month with a shoulder injury. Do you see that affecting Penrith in any way? Thankfully, that does mean the Warriors play Penrith without Cleary, but there's a lot of other good players.
Look, I think there's a chance it might, and they'll have a big game this week against Parramatta. But I think we saw when they had a few of their Origin players out, it affected them pretty heavily. Or I will say that there was a few more players being out, so I don't think he's probably the most influential player in the game right now behind Tommy Turbo. So it'll have an influence, but I think maybe not as much, seeing as though it's just him, and you'll still have Luai and Burton slots into the halves, where that's his specialist position. So I think it'll sting them a little bit, but not as badly as they were affected during Origin period, around Origin 1. Yeah.
And I saw, I should have grabbed a screenshot of it, but Gus Gould and Sterlo, the better Sterling out there talking about league, they did their prediction for what the final top 8 would be. They both had the Warriors at 8th, and I think the only difference, they basically had the exact same teams. They had St. George dropping out and Cronulla coming in. So how onto it do you think that is? Oh, and I think Sterling had the Newcastle Knights in, and I think they had the Sharks. Yeah, they had the Sharks out. Sterling had the Sharks out and the Dragons out, and he had the Warriors and the Knights in. And Gould had what we see here in that top 8, but Cronulla at 7th and the Warriors at 8th.
That's how I see it as well. Hopefully, because I think we've dropped enough close games that I think we'd need to be happy with 8th if we squeaked into the 8. I think St. George, they keep pulling out surprise results every now and then, but they're trending downwards, whereas Cronulla's trending upwards and have won a few on the bounce. So if they can keep going like they're going, I think they might stay, and hopefully it's us that picks up that last spot, because I think from 6 upwards, it's pretty much set in stone.
Yeah, I think it's really just 7th and 8th that are going to shift around. Either Dragons and Sharks stay in, or I'd say 12th and up still. I think Titans, Tigers, Bulldogs, and Brisbane are gone.
Yeah.
I don't have any faith in the Titans anymore. Newcastle can still pull out wins, and they're going to have Ponga back. And the Warriors need to get winning. If the Warriors lose this week, they're in big trouble, because that gap's going to start building. There's just 2 points in it between them and the top 8 right now. But if they lose this week and those teams above them win, that's then 4 points. And they also still have to play the Rabbitohs and Penrith. So, they need to win this week. But, the Cowboys and the Raiders are in that same area as well as the Dragons, Sharks, and the Warriors, where if they can get some wins on the board, they're going to keep themselves in the hunt. They just can't drop too many. So it's going to be, I think we're going to start seeing what that 8 is in at least probably the next 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, still very competitive right now for those last 2 spots.
Yeah. And so that's the ladder there. No shiftment due to no games. But we may as well get into our fixtures for round 16 and our picks. So Thursday night, we've got the Roosters and the Storm. Quite a good way to kick it off.
Yeah,
I've gone with the Storm. I've gone with the Storm here. I think I'm still got Storm as my eventual winners of the whole competition. And the Roosters have been good, but against these top quality teams with their issues with depth, I think the Storm have to come away with it.
Oh, yeah, it's so hard to go past them. The Roosters get a bit of a boost. They get Sam Walker back this week. But, the form of the Storm are, it's just way too hard to pick against them. They're clocking up scores on everybody.
Yeah. And then first game on Friday, we've got the Warriors and the Dragons. This was hard. This was hard for me. Warriors, I'm always confident the Warriors can do something out there. But the Dragons have been trying to befuddle me every week. But I have gone with the Warriors. They don't have Reece Walsh, but I think the additions of Dallin Watene-Zesniak and Chad Townsend is going to add a bit more with Chad more direction and with Dallin more pace. And I think the Dragons just aren't good enough. So I think they'll be able to get the win here over the Dragons.
Yeah, no Reece Walsh. He's kind of got a handy replacement, a guy named Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. You might know him.
He's played a few games, I believe.
Yeah, he's not bad. And I think we've gone pretty well against the Dragons the last at least 2 or 3 games. So, yeah, I've stuck with Warriors. I'm staying loyal.
Yeah, I think after all those years of the Warriors really struggling against the Dragons, I think they're on like a 5 or 6 winning streak against them now.
Yeah, we've turned the corner. It's good.
Yeah, and then the next game on Friday is Penrith versus Para. No Cleary, as we said, but I still think the Panthers will be good enough here over Parramatta.
Yeah, I think so too. Matt Burton's not a bad guy to bring into your halves, and he'll probably be one of the next big things so long as the Bulldogs don't ruin his career. But yeah, it might be a tight one. The Eels, if they're on, could be tight, but I've stuck with Panthers as well.
Yeah. And then on our big Super Saturday, we've got the Bulldogs and Manly first up. Pretty easy, Manly. Bulldogs, I'm scared. This was a bit closer, I think, last time they played.
Yeah.
But I think it's still going to be a quite a heavy win, especially with the momentum guys like Tommy Turbo will bring in from Origin after that big win. Yeah, I'm scared to see what happens to the Bulldogs, unfortunately for Bulldogs fans.
Oh, yeah, same here. The recent form of both teams are polar opposites. Sea Eagles, easy pick.
Yep. Next game up, Raiders-Titans. They're both kind of teams that are just horrible at the moment, but I've gone with the Raiders. They're at home, and the Titans... Well, I was going to say, both teams don't know how to play second half football, so that will make it an interesting second half. But yeah, I think the Raiders will get over here. They're generally faster starters, so if they both collapse in the second half, the Raiders should have done enough in the first.
Yeah, I went. We're copying each other, Brad. I went Raiders as well. It was a tough one to pick because both these sides aren't traveling well at all. I think the Raiders get back Jared Croker this week after a while out, and
they do. Yeah,
he's big for them. He's one of the co-captains. So, and then being at home, I stuck with Raiders.
Yeah. Then the last game on Saturday, we've got the Knights and the Cowboys. I've gone with the Knights here. Playing at home hasn't really helped them this season, but I think they're going to have the goods here over the Cowboys. Especially Todd Payton is not there right now, so you're playing the Cowboys without their coach.
And Kalen Pong is back.
And Kalen Pong is back, which the Knights showed that they can beat the Warriors without Ponga. Having Ponga and Pierce back against the Cowboys, they should be able to get the job done.
Yeah, that's big for them. Yeah, I went Knights too. I think they should get this one done.
Yeah, and then the first game on Sunday, we've got the Sharks versus the Broncos. It's Sharks for me here. Broncos, I think, would struggle against their reserve grade team right now. Sharks for me. I think Sean Johnson's been playing well the last couple of weeks. I think he's in a great headspace after the news about signing with the Warriors, so he's happy, and I think that will benefit his game, and they will put the Broncos to the sword. Broncos have changed their halves pairing yet again, so there's still no stability in this side, and they won't get the win. It's probably the most confident I've been in any game this round.
Yeah, well, they lost a few players at training, I think, the Broncos. They get Katoni Staggs back, which is pretty good for them.
Yep.
And they could do us a solid. They could do us a solid and beat the Sharks. That'd be better for us, but I don't see it happening, mate. I'm with you. I think the Sharks.
Yeah, as a selfish Warriors fan, I would like to see the Sharks get the loss here to help the Warriors get into that 8. But I just don't see the Broncos stringing it together. And that takes us to the last game of the round, which is the Rabbitohs versus the Tigers. Kind of rinse and repeat of what we just said with the Sharks Broncos. I think the Rabbitohs will win this one quite handsomely.
Yeah, they should be far too classy, mate. Not a lot of not a lot of hope for the West Tigers, I don't think, especially on their last outing.
Yeah, but I will be watching with interest to see how King goes in the second game for them.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not as bad as that game against the Storm. So yeah, that's an interesting. At least it's a game with a top tier team to end the round instead of just always having the Dragons or the Bulldogs, in that last game of the round. And Simon gave us his picks. I think he's basically gone like we have. He has got the Storm by 6, the Warriors by 4, Panthers by 6, Seagulls by 10, Raiders by 2, Knights by 4, Sharks by 6, and Rabbitohs by 8.
Yeah, I always knew Simon was smart. I always knew.
Yeah. So next week we will still be level with our tips. So you gotta not be so scared and pick some risky games in there if you want to get past me. Or I might need to so I can actually get the lead for the first time this year.
I'm sure we will at one point.
So yeah, we have gone a little bit long, but we'll cover some overseas news quite quickly. First part, Simon did mention it in our little chat that we can't show to the crowd yet, but the Combined Nations team defeated England 26-24 this week. So They had the England side against just a combination of Super League players from other nations. And yeah, I didn't get to watch the game, but I heard it was quite good if you weren't an English fan. But yeah, good to see them over there at least trying something to put some international type scenario. Even that would be a good thing for this round if you did like a combined team against New Zealand or something. That would be an interesting point. We'll write it down and we'll email Peter Volandis after the show. Let him know. And then we got some former Warriors news. Conrad Harrell.
So they did manage to put that together. What kind of England team or European team could you put together from NRL players? Are there enough players there to put an England team together or not?
No, not really. There's only a handful. Less now that George Williams took his ball and went home. There's a handful.
So it's only so you couldn't put that together as part of the European team in there.
They would have to be in the Combined Nations team. But yeah, Simon said the Combined Nations team only had 2 days training and very poor crowd attendance for the match. Yeah. To be honest, I don't blame the poor match attendance. If I was over in the UK at the moment, I wouldn't want to go outside because COVID's still very big over there. But they don't, as Simon alluded earlier in the show, England don't really care about the international type of game anyway as well. So I don't really feel like they would have promoted it that much either. The fact that it was so late with the Combined Nations getting their training there too. But at least even with 2 days training, they were still better than England, which is another tick in the book as a Kiwi over here. But yeah, Conrad Harrell, former Warrior, you may have seen this in the social medias.
I sure did.
In his game that we're going to briefly talk about the result here, he got knocked unconscious by Lee Mossop. There was a bit of niggle in the play the ball, and Conrad decided to run after a prop, which is generally not a good idea. And Lee gave him a little 1-2 and just put him out cold. Conrad's fine. Conrad actually shared footage off the altercation on social media and kind of had a laugh at himself. Obviously, it's not great to see players trying to knock each other out, but at least no one was hurt long term. But
Brad the Thug has come out again to report this.
They need to make it like ice hockey, where you just get a 2-minute stand down and everyone just lets you go until you're tired. But and then a bit of kind of going with the COVID talk that's gone through the whole show. Wednesday's game between Castleford and St. Helens this week's been cancelled because Castleford have advised they are unable to produce a team. St. Helens get the points by default, and they actually get a score of 24-0 for the default. There was no game postponement already in the Super League, but this one wasn't allowed to be postponed because I've got it here. Castleford did not meet the threshold for a postponement, which means they need 7 players unavailable, or 7 senior players, unavailable due to positive COVID tests or being close contacts. Castleford came out and said, in addition to a large injury toll to their senior players, they've had a large number of youngsters unavailable due to being close contacts, but due to them being juniors, they didn't count. So I thought that was a bit unfair, but it's a bit of a concern for everything in general, because these two teams are playing each other in the Challenge Cup final in a couple of weeks. So if Castleford can't get a team together, what's it going to do for that final? It's a bit of a concern. Hopefully those close contacts get negative tests and they can come back into the camp and get themselves playing again. But yeah, so that meant we had a shorter round, but we had Castleford. Castleford had beaten Catalans before this happened, 16-6. Wakefield beat Wigan 14-6. Warrington defeated Lee 44-18. Hull FC defeated Huddersfield 17-10. Hull KR and St Helens was postponed. And then Leeds ended the game 38-12. So despite Conrad getting knocked out, that was basically the only win Salford got in that game. And then this round, Simons also said Castleford Tigers are resting players for the Challenge Cup. That's probably true as well. They probably decided we'll take this one and beat St Helens in the Challenge Cup. But and Lee's very close to getting relegated, Simon said. They've just come up as well, which is a bit unfortunate. They came up replacing the Toronto Wolfpack. So I think they were always on a hard road this year in their first year back. But yeah, it'd be unfortunate to see them go down again. And I know Simon will give us the information, but for some reason, rounds 12 and 13 are very close this week. I've actually included both of them because there's literally 2 games on Wednesday. One now defaulted due to St Helens and Castleford, as we just covered. But then we've got Wigan versus Warrington, Salford versus Wakefield, Huddersfield versus Catalans, and Leeds versus Lee. And then that they finish up on the Thursday. Then on Sunday, round 13 starts with St Helens versus Wigan, Hull FC versus Salford, Warrington versus Leeds, Catalans and Hull KR is postponed, and then Huddersfield versus Castleford. So I don't even know if Castleford will make that game at the end next Tuesday, which will be finished just before our show next week. And yeah, Simon's also mentioned it's hard on Lee, and they only get 50% of the TV money that other teams have got. So do you have anything else on Super League before we let everyone go home? Oh, we got Simon again. They haven't had a French player in the NRL for the 5 years ago. The French rugby league team are trying to get going and get a New Caledonia team in the Queensland Cup. They need to do something. That'll be a good way for them to grow the game. I don't know the quality of players that they have to make it into the NRL, but I think definitely if they could get a side into the Queensland Cup, you would start seeing that. I suppose you could go, if you went back 5 or 6 years and say, would Papua New Guinea have enough good players to play in the NRL? And they've got quite a few now. Same with Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. So yeah, they just need to get if they can get into the Queensland Cup, they can get some players to get that experience. And then we'd probably see a few more of them. And then that is another tool that can make the international game stronger, which is still sorely needed. Anything to add there, Richie?
No, you're on the money. I just nod and smile and agree with you.
On the money on everything bar tips when it comes to Origin. So that will do it for our show this week. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Standoff with Brad and Richie. Remember, for your weekly update on Rugby League, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. on Wednesday here on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Thanks again for joining me, Richie, and good night, everyone.
No worries. Thanks, everybody.